3, 2, 1. This is a podcast for Black women entrepreneurs who are on a journey with their money. My name is Monique Kitchens, and honestly, I'm on a journey too. You see, even though I've had great success in my career and business, it took a long time for me to overcome my struggles with money. But I finally did. Now, I'm aiming for my next level, and I invite you to join me on this part of my journey. Do you have some big money goals? If so, listen in as I, along with my expert guests, trusted mentors, and closest friends, share our secrets for creating the businesses and bank accounts of our dreams. This is Sisternomics. I've invited you to come on this journey with me as I aim for my next income level, which is 7 figures in my business. The goal is to do that within 18 short months. And so I'm very, very happy to have you along on this journey with me. You can either eavesdrop and just listen into some of the great experts that we'll have coming on the show, or you can be an active participant and you can, listen for yourself and implement the strategies and grow your own business as well. And I'd love to hear from you. You can connect with me on social media. I'm on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And you can find me on all of those platforms at Monique Caradine, okay? All right, so today I am very excited to share with you some snippets of an interview that I did actually 2 years ago. The interview was with one of the smartest women that I've talked to recently. Her name is ChrisTia Donaldson. ChrisTia Donaldson is the CEO of TGIN. Now, you've probably seen these hair products, typically for people with natural hair or curly hair. You've seen them on the shelves of Target, CVS, Sally Beauty. And she has managed to grow this business over the past 10 or 12 years or so to a multi-million-dollar business. She did this interview with me about 2 years ago, and it was so revealing and so many juicy nuggets that came out of this interview. Oh my goodness. I'm just going to tell you right now, you want to get your pen and paper ready, because in the first segment, ChrisTia is going to talk about everything from why she chose to keep working her full-time job for 10 whole years while she built her business. You know how some people can jump the gun a little bit on that and leave their jobs prematurely. Well, she hung in there at her full-time job for 10 years while running this growing, emerging business. And she explains how and why she did that. She also talks about what she did immediately after she eventually decided to quit her job. And I talked to her literally just a couple of weeks or so after she quit her job. She also shares the impact that coaching and mentoring has had on her success. And I loved what she said about it. And then another big takeaway from this first segment was the secrets to scaling her business to what it was at the time when I interviewed her. Again, this was about 2 years ago, and this interview has never, ever been heard. So this has been in my archives. I am literally going into the archives, dusting off this interview and sharing it with you. And even though it was done 2 years ago, it is still filled with juicy nuggets and still relevant today. Go ahead and grab a pen and paper. You're going to want to write down some notes. This is ChrisTia Donaldson of TGIN. I'll never forget the day I looked at my Instagram and ChrisTia Donaldson popped up on my feed, and I just got absolute goosebumps when I read that she had decided, after 10 long years of building her company, which of course, as you know, is Thank God It's Natural. She was building the company while also working her day job as a senior corporate counsel to a major company. And she wrote in her feed that she had finally decided to resign and pursue her dream full time. And I literally got chills. And so I was so excited to reach out to her when I read that and ask her to be a part of the podcast. And so she's here with me today. ChrisTia, welcome and congratulations.
Thank you so much, Monique.
I know it's the first time you've ever talked about your decision to leave your job, and I'm glad to have you here. So talk a little bit about what finally, after 10 years of doing TGIN, what led to your decision to leave your job?
Okay, so that is an amazing question. I think there were a couple of things. So essentially, I was like, okay, once we reach a certain level of success, I'm going to leave. And for me, that was like, okay, when we got into Target back in 2015, I'm like, once we get into Target, I'm going to, we're in Target. I should totally leave. But what I learned was that I could still keep doing my day job and the Target thing. It was hard getting into Target, but once we got it up and running, things were pretty seamless. But I was also learning that being in national retail, and we can kind of talk about this separately, but being in a national retailer, there are a lot of people touching your money. And so even though you're making a lot of money, it's kind of like the record industry where you could be selling 1 million records and end up in bankruptcy 3 years later if things are not planned or managed correctly. And so I kind of saw that. And so I was still being a little cautious. But given the fact that I could do both, I was like, okay, let me do both as long as I could. Mm-hmm. So finally, when I reached a point where I'm like, I'm going to quit, that's when I found out I had cancer. So at the beginning of 2015, we get in a Target. At the end of 2015, I found out I have breast cancer. So 2016, I take the year off, pretty much 9 months to kind of focus on my treatments, if you will. And I take time off from TGIN and I take a leave of absence from Oracle. But when I come back to Oracle in September, kind of like trying to say, I know this is coming to an end, but I don't want to end it prematurely. I want to go back to work and then say I'm leaving work versus not go back to work and not give it a chance. And when I go back to work, I get 2 emails. In my 10 years, I had never seen an email like this. 2 people had died, like while I was on vacation. They sent out a company-wide email, and I was like, I'm totally out of here. Life is too short. So I came back to work in September, did work, and then I decided to wait until January until I had kind of my ducks in a row. And once I had my ducks in a row, I gave notice on January 17th.
Wow.
And my last day was March 17th. But ultimately what pushed me over the edge were those 2 emails around people dying, as well as us getting into, CVS, Rite Aid, Walgreens, Sally Beauty, Whole Foods. I was like, I have too many balls in the air and I want to give this my all.
Once you decided to leave that day, March 17th, that was like your last day. What was that next day like? What did you do and how did you feel?
Well, it's funny because I'm in a CEO peer group. And originally I was just going to start working on TGIN. They were like, you immediately have to go somewhere. I'm like, I'm taking a vacation in 2 weeks. I'll do, relax then. They're like, no, you have to go somewhere and celebrate and just kind of unplug and view this as a transition. And so immediately after that, I went to visit my dad in Florida for like a week, came back, did some work, and then I went to Mexico for a week. So I literally had like almost 3 weeks off. But my first day on the job, I had a great meeting with the CEO or former CEO of Alberta Culver. And it was literally unreal, like the breakthrough from having that breakfast with him. Just kind of like, I'm in a place now where I can relax and really think about things and set up these type of meetings and not be thinking about, okay, do I have to respond to someone at Oracle? So my first real day on the job, like I said, was 3 weeks later. And like I said, it started with a meeting with a guy named Jim Marino, who's the former CEO of Helene Curtis, former CEO of About Her Cover, and he's also a private equity investor. So that was really powerful.
So because I'm a big believer, ChrisTia, that when a lot of the women that I know who are entrepreneurs, brilliant, smart, experts at what they do, but they hustle, they grind constantly. And I'm a big believer now. I used to be that way as well, but I'm a big believer now that you have to give your endeavor a little space. That's what I call it, giving it a little space to breathe. And when you can walk away and take 3 weeks off like you did, instead of jumping right in, you open up the energetic space to allow amazing things like that meeting that you had to happen. So I think that a big reason why it happened is because you had a different energy because you took time off.
I agree. And also it's the notion that we talk about a lot about this in my CEO group. I think a lot of business owners, particularly women business owners and Black women business owners, yes, we may quit our jobs and yes, we may have our business, but we don't have what I would call the long range plan of having the right people, right seats, and playing conductor. My CEO group that I've been in the last 4 months has constantly drilled into me, you are not the quarterback. You are not the wide receiver. You're the coach, and the coach is on the sidelines, but the goal is ultimately to be in the skybox and being the owner.
Yeah.
Like, you don't want to be the person playing in the game. You have to get the right players in the game and allow yourself to kind of deal with like 4 key players, maybe your quarterback, what have you. And that's going to really take your business to the next level when you're able to work on the business versus working in the business.
Yeah. So I'm sure it's probably been difficult for you, though, to make that shift. Has it not?
Not really, because now I'm just like, now that I have that kind of blueprint of this is where I need to get to the next level. My team, everyone's on board. I let them know I have to empower you even more than what you currently have in terms of your current responsibilities. You have to take risk. You have to be bold. You can't get really much wrong. 98% of what we do, if you make a bad decision or a bad call, is reversible. And so it has been a shift, but it has not been difficult. It's just more so delegating, and getting out of my own way.
Love it.
I'm happy to do it because I'm like, I see what is going to allow for me from both a personal and a professional standpoint, from like relaxing, from travel, what have you. So I'm excited to do it.
That is fantastic. How else, in what other ways has the decision to leave your job at Oracle impacted the growth or the expansion or the direction or even the bottom line of TGIN?
Well, I think it's allowed me to really be more strategic and, again, focusing on getting the right people in the right seats, because before things were very much like being in a tornado or a whirlwind, like every single day, because it's like, oh my gosh, I have to check my Oracle email. Oh my gosh, I have to send this out. Oh my gosh, I have to get TGIN stuff done. And now I'm really able, like you said, just to step back and see things from a more clear, calm perspective. Things are still very much chaotic, but having that space to kind of really decompress, I'm able to be more strategic. I'm able to have more one-on-ones with my team. I'm able to be more creative. So when I met with the guy from Alberta Culver, and he told me, he recently invested in a company that most people know, they just probably would not know the name of it, that got bought by Johnson & Johnson for $3 billion. And that day I went home and I was like, how did they do this? And then I was like, oh, I see how they did this. I see how this works. Well, let me figure out what I can do to kind of position myself for something like that long term. And so things became very clear to me in a way that they had not been previously.
So I'm curious, was that meeting more so about mentoring, or was it about a possible investment opportunity or partnership? I'm just curious if you can give us a little more insight.
No, so that meeting was more so this guy had worked in the hair care business for the last 30 years. And then from a management CEO perspective, who had sold companies for purposes of acquisition. Then he was on the other side of it where he was buying a company that he was selling for acquisition. So the meeting was just more so general advice, helping me to think through the numbers, helping me to think through strategy, helping me to think through my relationship with retailers and what I want that to look like. So I would say a little bit of mentoring. It was like our first time connecting, but a little bit of mentoring, a lot of strategy, a lot of encouragement, and then just thinking long term beyond business. Like, he's on the board of directors of Office Depot and another publicly traded company. And just kind of, what does that look like? We talked about, the future of retail, because, people think about, when they think of future retail, they think Best Buy, Circuit City, Barnes & Noble's going out of business. But he also told me about the impact that Amazon and online shopping has for office supply stores. People don't print as much. People don't use as much paper. When is the last time you used an actual pencil? So it was just kind of a general business conversation. And it got my juices flowing.
Okay, so there you have it. And as I told you, ChrisTia is extremely honest and forthright in sharing her journey. And there is more. In this next segment that I'm going to share with you, she talks about breaking into seven figures because there was an article that I read that talked about how she finally got to that point. And then she kind of breaks down how she got there. She also talks candidly about venture capital and funding a small business. And so she kind of shares her experience with both of those. And then she talks about thinking like a seven-figure CEO. And that's one of the segments that I really, really love about this interview that we did. Two other ahas or takeaways from this segment. ChrisTia talks about the challenges that she still faces today. And she also shares her cancer journey. And in this interview, she kind of gives us a little bit of an update on how she's doing. It's a happy ending, I'm glad to say. So listen up. Here's the second segment of my interview with ChrisTia Donaldson of TGIN. I want to get back to your decision to leave the job. I know many people, they leave their jobs to pursue their business, and sometimes they do it a little too quickly. I can even look back at my own past, and I think that I left too quickly as well. But again, you really took your time. So you've kind of alluded to an answer around this previously, but talk a little bit more about some of the things you definitely wanted to have in place within TGIN before you made the decision to leave your job?
Okay, so the first thing I'll tell women or men who are thinking of quitting their job before, quitting their job to go pursue their passion, the one thing that stuck out to me when I gave notice to my manager was he was like, well, look, if you ever need to come back or want to work for us on a quarterly or consultant basis, let me know. And I'm like, why didn't I ask for this a year ago? Like, why didn't I ask for this 2 years ago? And I think a lot of people think it's all or nothing. Like, I'm either here or I'm not. Why don't you float the ideal past your manager, particularly with a good reputation? And if you've been there for several years, hey, would it be a possibility for me to have an alternative work arrangement? Maybe I do something like part-time, like 30 hours a week or 20 hours a week. The early stages of any business is largely administrative. So I would first say that is something you should consider before kind of jumping ship entirely. But other things that I had to have in place from Oracle, and then I'll talk about the things I had to have in place from TGIN. From Oracle perspective, I had to make sure my stock options were good. I need to make sure that I had, my health insurance all situated before I left and what that looked like. From a banking perspective, I had to make sure I had all my lines of credit set up with various banks because they like to look at your W-2 in addition to your business revenues. Mm-hmm. So it's like, make sure you get the money before you leave and quit your job. They want to see that W-2. So if you're looking to extend or increase your line of credit, make sure you do that before you quit. And then little things like I needed to make sure my household budget, like I knew what that looked like from a personal perspective. But from a TGIN perspective, our operations, I'm not going to say they were pretty airtight, but they were pretty seamless. I had a really, really, really good team, but I just wanted to make sure our revenues were at a point where I felt comfortable with the growth and trajectory going forward. I also wanted to make sure that like I understood the nature of doing business with a major retailer. Mm-hmm. A lot of people say that, not to say that I'm risk averse, but I'm more of a perfectionist. But like I said, there's a lot of things that happen behind the scenes when you're doing business with like a Target or a Walmart or a CVS that you need to be aware of. And sometimes you have to see that play out to have a full understanding of the financial picture related to the opportunity versus, I have a contract or a purchase order with Target. So.
Right. Okay. The revenues of TGIN, I think it was in Crane Chicago Business when I read that by 2015, the revenue of TGIN had topped $1 million. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And then the article also said that in 2016, you had expected your revenue to double. So hopefully you met that revenue goal. And at the point that this article was written, it said that you had 6 employees who make the products by hand in small batches. So is that still the same? Are you still seeing a steady increase of your revenues? And is your team still that small, and are they still making the product by hand in small batches, or is that changing now that you have all these deals in place?
No, that's good. So, the revenues, yeah, we did meet our targets. We're having great growth right now. And in terms of things being made in hand by small batches, yes, that still occurs. There's some stuff that we've outsourced at this point, but yeah, we continue to make probably about 20% of our items by hand.
I want to talk a little bit now about venture capital or funding a business, so that the business owners who are listening to you right now, I want them to really kind of understand how they can truly grow their business and compete like TGIN is competing in a major way in the marketplace. A lot of people tend to play small. It's 6 figures and maybe a little bit beyond. But tell us whatever you would like to share about venture capital and funding a business.
Okay, so I guess those are 2 questions. So I'll take the venture capital piece first.
Okay.
Even though we have not received any outside investment, I'm still 100% owner of the business. I've had a lot of conversations with people, right? So the first thing is you got to know your numbers. And when I say that, you have to know your gross profit, your expenses, as well as your net profit. Those are like the 3 major numbers that you need to know. And you need to know what they are, both from a absolute number standpoint as well as from a percentage standpoint, because people are going to always call you on your numbers. And the more you know your numbers, the more attractive of an investment vehicle you are. The second thing is I've learned is sometimes I have a tendency to kind of jump straight into my business, whereas I've had several people tell me, hold up, I want to know your story. I want to know how you got there. Mm-hmm. So I don't spend like 20 minutes on my story if I have a 30-minute meeting, but I do realize that people want you to lead with who you are and how you came up with this idea. People want to connect with you on a personal level. So that's very important. The third thing when it comes to VCs or private equity or potential investors, you want to have, even though you can write your business plan, really people want to see a deck of a slick PowerPoint ready to go. And when I say slick, there's different definitions of slick, but like your stuff needs to look like really, 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 really nice and tell a really, really good story. And there are people who can help you tighten up your PowerPoint game. Even though I feel like our PowerPoint looks really good, I'm still trying to take it to the next level. And there are resources that are fairly affordable on sites like Upwork that can help you do that. Let's see what else when it comes to the VCs. Have people want to know what your 5 to 7 year exit strategy is. Are you going to stay in the business? Are you going to sell the business? If you are, has this been done before, and what type of people are you going to be dealing with? So those are kind of the main things. But the one thing I will say about that is the more conversations you have, the better. Like over time, I'm able to build on kind of what I've heard from, talking to this person in New York and talking to this person in Boston, what have you. So the more conversations you have, the better. And so I just say take your time with that process. Mm-hmm. And then what have I learned about kind of, just funding the business? Again, I'm working with a part-time CFO now. He hasn't told me how much it's going to cost, but I think it's a very wise investment for us to make at this point. And by part-time, I mean, like, he's going to sit down with me maybe once a month for like 4 hours. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to run major financial decisions past him, because sometimes entrepreneurs tend to be overly optimistic. These financial decisions are like, how much should I give my employees in raises? What should our bonus structure be like? Should I hire these 2 new girls for our marketing team? Should I invest in new space, or should I continue to lease? And he's going to just kind of stress test my assumptions, if you will, and be kind of like that devil's advocate. So, yeah, that's kind of, really critical in terms of like how I finance my business and how I think about my bottom line.
Again, my guest is ChrisTia Donaldson. She's the CEO of Thank God It's Natural, also known as TGIN, one of the major players in the marketplace when it comes to natural hair care. Really excited that you're being so candid with us. Talk more now, ChrisTia, about mentors. How important was it for you to have mentors or coaches or like the CEO mastermind group that you talked about? How important was all of that in your decision to leave your job and pursue your business full time?
Well, it's funny. I just met with my CEO coach and she's like, you're a lawyer. You gather too much information, but when are you going to start trusting yourself? You already have the answers. So when it came time to leave my job, I didn't really ask anybody. I just made that decision. The only person who I really cared what they thought was my dad, right? And other than that, I didn't really run it past anybody because I knew in my gut it was time. It was time to leave. But along the way, there have been other decisions where I've had to make, where I've definitely relied on people's advice, just to get a sense of, again, entrepreneurs can be really optimistic and it's nice to have other perspectives. So some people aren't necessarily my formal mentors, and I really should be building a board of advisors at this point. But the point is, I have people that I regularly call up and solicit advice from in terms of, hey, should I go on this international business trip, or should I go to this ECRM in Las Vegas where I can meet with all the buyers and build relationships? It might be things like that, or it might be like, should we move into this direction from a strategic or innovation standpoint? So mentors and coaches have been very helpful to me. But again, my CEO group, I talk about it all the time. That has been amazing because sometimes it can be so lonely being the only person making all the decisions, and to be able to talk to other people who are faced with similar challenges within their organization in a confidential setting has been extremely valuable for me.
Yeah. So where would you rank having a mentor or a coach, like in terms of importance on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being your highest? What's your take on that?
A coach is super, super, super important. I would say it's like a 10. It's a 10. It's a 10. It's literally a 10 because it's the kind of thing, when you're first starting out, you're just kind of like heads down getting stuff done. But like at this point, you need that ability to take a step back and be able to bounce ideals off of someone. Like if we were having an honest conversation, something that came up in one of our last sessions amongst the group that I realized that I deal with this, or I may deal with this, or other CEOs may deal with this. But sometimes people in positions of leadership, their ego gets in the way of them being a good leader. Someone said, sometimes you have to give up what you're famous for. And what that means is sometimes a CEO gets off on being the smartest person in the room or having all the right answers. But sometimes you need to hire people who are smarter than you. And again, that means giving up what you're famous for in order to make your bottom line that much better. So, yeah.
I'm just thinking back to when you came to my radio show over a decade ago, when you had first written the book, Thank God I'm Natural. And I can't remember, did you have the business in place when you wrote the book?
Yeah. No, I didn't. I was just starting to build the business.
Which is another thing. Okay, I didn't plan to ask this, but I got it because I think about that book and you were just getting started. And I've been talking recently. In fact, one of the interviews coming up on the podcast is a woman who says that every entrepreneur should have a book. How much of a role did the book play in helping you really say, yeah, I need to start this business and really grow it because there's a need for this product in the marketplace?
It was huge because we were able to distinguish ourselves from other brands in the marketplace by positioning ourselves as the expert, like as a thought leader on hair versus, I'm just like every other girl in my kitchen naming something after my grandma. Like people were like, oh my gosh, she wrote a book. Like she's really giving thought to this. And even as I go to this kind of next level in my career, whether it's hair or being on the board of directors of like Starbucks or Facebook, that would be really cool. I want to write a book about kind of my journey launching this business and some of the challenges I faced along the way, because a book just kind of like, it sets you apart and it allows people, like someone told me the other day, tell me what I can't Google. You get what I'm saying? Like you can Google me and you'll be like, she went to Harvard College, she went to Harvard Law School, she had breast cancer. But he's like, tell me what I can't Google.
Yeah.
And that's where the book sets you apart.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Let's talk about what your biggest challenge has been. You've talked about a few of them, but something that you've just learned just in this past, 45 days or so that you've been out doing the business full time. What's been a big challenge?
Well, I think the biggest challenge is around, how would I put this? We just had a whole conversation about this morning. I think letting go of what made me successful as a lawyer like they say, sometimes your greatest strength can also be your greatest weakness. The things that made me successful as a lawyer, meaning information gathering, processing issues, being really conservative, does not serve me well in the business world. And so I have to kind of let some of that go. So whether it's, making, decisions more quickly with less information, that in the legal world, you want to read every document, every exhibit, every schedule. And in the business world, that does not serve you well. So I think I'm just in transition around that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So talk about how you see your future in the business in the next 5 to 7 years. Do you plan to eventually sell? Are you going to stay with it? What does that look like for you?
So at this juncture, the plan is to stay with it and kind of blow this thing out.
Yeah.
Again, right people, right seats.
Mm-hmm.
Right people, right seats, meaning having a good, strong person over operations, a good, strong person over our retail relationships, and someone who's really kicking butt in marketing. My job is just to play conductor or coach from the sidelines and say, hey, send me updates. Let's talk about high-level strategic things.
What if an opportunity came along, though, today, ChrisTia, that was just irresistible? Would you still say, I'm going to stay with it and continue to grow this thing? Or
I'm having too much fun right now to walk away. Yeah.
That's cool. That's cool. All right. So this is the Women, Freedom, and Money podcast. So I got to ask you, do you currently have the money and the freedom that you want right now?
I think so. I'm kind of in a good place, if you will. Everything else after this is pretty much what they call just scoreboard. Like you're just doing it to just wow out. And so on one hand, you're wilding out for your own ego. But on another hand, you're like, as a Black girl doing or reaching what we have, I've got to do it for the other Black girls that are coming after me, meaning like 2% of women-owned businesses reach over the $1 million mark.
Right.
And so that's a very small number. So you kind of owe it to, women, you owe it to Black women to take this thing as far as you can. You just do.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
to be a part of a bigger narrative.
2% of women past the $1 million mark, but an even smaller percentage of Black women, like you said, even get to that point. So I just love what you're doing, and I'm so happy for you. And I'm just so glad that, even with your fight, your cancer fight, that you're surviving and thriving and just showing up as a powerful, strong example of what's possible for us. How's your health now? You doing good?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm totally cancer-free. And I mean, like they say, it's a blessing in the sense that it forced me to slow down. And it also gave me the perspective that, this company, I'm not going to say it can run without me, but during my time off, they did an amazing job of keeping things going. So when I came back, I was like, I don't have to work as hard as I used to. I need to actually work less. I'll get more done by working less.
Words to live by. You get more done by working less. If that's not worthy of being put on a Post-it note and stuck someplace where you can see it every single day, I don't know what is. In fact, I really honestly think that tip by itself can create a huge shift in your business. And really, that's how most massively successful people think. They're not working constantly, nonstop, day in and day out. They take breaks. They take time off. They delegate. Anyway, I'd love to hear your takeaways from this conversation with ChrisTia Donaldson of TGIN. Tell me what resonated with you. But more importantly, which of these tips and strategies do you plan to implement? Hit me up on Instagram or Facebook at Monique Caradine. You can also find me on Twitter. And while you're online, you might as well go over to your favorite online bookstore and pick up her 2 books. Now, the first one was from way back in 2009, around the time when she was just getting started. And that book is called Thank God I'm Natural, The Ultimate Guide to caring for and maintaining natural hair. I have that one in my library. It's an excellent book. But ChrisTia also has a book that just recently came out. It's called This Is Only a Test: What Breast Cancer Taught Me About Faith, Love, Hair, and Business. And obviously that's about her breast cancer journey. And lastly, you guys, don't forget to stop by your local Walgreens, Target, or CVS, or Sally Beauty Supply, or any other retailer and pick up some of the products for your hair. I'm a naturalista, and let me tell you the products that I love, love, love from TGIN. First of all, that Buttercream Daily Moisturizer is fire, okay? I love it. I use it just about every other day. I also really love the Honey Miracle Hair Mask. That's another one of my favorites. And the shampoo, the Moisture Rich Sulfate-Free Shampoo. I love the fact that it does not contain sulfate, and it leaves my hair just really fresh and clean feeling. That's just one of my favorite shampoos. So make sure you check out the products, check out the books, and show some love to ChrisTia. You can find her online on all social media platforms as well. All right, you guys, that's going to do it for this episode of Sisternomics. I'm so glad that you took this time with me, and I really hope you enjoyed this interview. Be sure to join me again next time. Until then, take care.